Welcome to Deep Drinks Podcast. This will be a very deep episode. Everyone, I'd like you to meet Kim Beyer, a musician born into Memphis Blues. She spent her teenage years in a Cincinnati pop trio and has spent some time in the European music scene. Her life took a tragic turn when her husband suffered a severe brain aneurysm. Her story has been virally documented through her TikTok, and now she is here to tell it all again in full. Welcome, Kim Beyer.
Hi, thanks.
Thanks for coming on. First of all, I didn't even ask this in the pre, but did I get your last name right? Beyer?
Beyer.
Beyer. Damn. Sorry. I apologize. It wouldn't be Deep Drinks if I didn't already stuff up. So, well, thank you so much for coming on. What did you choose to drink today?
I have a classic gin martini. I normally do with a lemon twist, but I'm out of lemons today. So we've just cheers, mate.
Sweet. Cheers. I got a bit of this is the closest thing we had to a martini glass. But yeah, cool. So for me, it's 10 a.m. What time is it for you?
8:03 p.m.
Nice.
So is it Thursday for you?
Yes, it is. Yes. I'm in the future.
You're in the future. That's wild. That's a little wild.
So thank you for coming on. I saw your story in TikTok, and I was kind of blown away. I guess we should just start with like your story. I guess that's where we should start. So can you give us like a long version of what you kind of explain over TikTok, because it's pretty incredible.
Sure. Yeah. So I at a pretty young age, I met and married a wonderful German man. We moved to Berlin. We were there for 7 years. We had our first baby, moved back because we wanted to be closer to relatives. And gosh, we had been married for almost 10 years, had our second child. We were living in Columbus, Ohio, and he went into work one day, 35 years old, and just collapsed in his office and had a seizure. Was rushed to the hospital, and they found a brain aneurysm, and they did emergency surgery. It was very bad. We were lucky that the hospital was so close to his place of employment, just like a 3-minute drive or something. If it had been any further away, I don't think that he would have made it. But they said it's the worst one that they'd seen in like 20 years.
Wow.
I was pretty shocked. He'd just been to the doctor and gotten a clean bill of health, and it's just a freak thing that you don't expect to happen at such a young age.
Can I ask how old was he at the time?
Yeah, he was 35 at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. What is a brain aneurysm for those who don't know?
Mm-hmm. It's like a bubble is how the doctors explain it to me, kind of that forms, and it can explode. And when it does, the blood can just like flood the brain and interrupt its processes. Suffocate it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So were you when it happened, he got rushed to hospital, where were you?
I was at home with our kids, and my mom and my brother had just gotten into town like that morning to visit us for the weekend, which is a little wild to think about. They just stayed after that, and they've been here ever since, really. Help the family out. I was at home. His coworker came and knocked on the door and looked very serious, which shook me a little bit, and said that he'd had a seizure and was unresponsive, and that I needed to come to the ER. And so we just like grabbed some things and grabbed the babies and headed over. So they took me back to see him. I just remember it feeling so surreal. And I'm usually pretty good in like crisis situations. I keep a pretty cool head. I'm like, oh, it's not that bad. Everybody calm down. It'll be fine. He was just at the doctor, But when they took me back to see him and I saw him laying, in the hospital bed and just like with all the wires and things, and he just looked dead. He wasn't the right color. You know, his eyes weren't open, and he just looked wrong. I don't know how else to describe it, but not, yeah. So that's when it kind of sank in, like, oh my gosh, like this could be really serious. I think what's happened. And it was a wild night, like, you know, just kind of on pins and needles, waiting to see if he would make it through the surgery to stop the bleeding in the brain. We had a lot of friends and family members there. Our baby was 4 months old at the time. And so, you know, I'm still nursing him, and I had pretty severe rheumatoid arthritis at the time. And so I was so grateful that like people came and kind of surrounded us, and that we weren't alone. And yeah, it's just very, very surreal night.
So
yeah.
Going into the surgery, did you know the chances of him like surviving that surgery?
I don't remember the chances. I remember they were very straightforward with me that there's a very good chance that he wouldn't make it through. It was already pretty bad, the condition that he was in. Yeah, and they just weren't sure. So yeah, I expected at any moment that one of the surgeons would come out and tell me that he was gone.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So so this is something I didn't realize until literally like after I'd invited you onto this channel, is you were quite a committed Christian at the time, and
Yes.
you kind of, we've talked about this in the back room, but you're kind of floating at the moment. You're not sure where your kind of faith is, but at the time you mentioned in the TikTok that he said that he saw Jesus in like his seizure or his aneurysm or something. And what were you thinking about through this, like from a faith perspective? Were you like praying? Obviously, you're probably praying. I don't know what type of church you were involved in. Were you part of a church that believed in miracles and healings and things like that? Can you talk a little bit about your faith at this point, like what was going through your mind?
Of course. Yeah, we were both very devoted Christians. He was working as a pastor at the time. So a lot of people from the church had come to the waiting room, and they were praying and like singing worship songs. And I had never experienced a miracle up close and personal before. So I don't know that I had that expectation, even though I'd heard of them and people were like, oh, God can heal him. I was like, maybe he will. I don't know. So I remember thinking like, yeah, maybe God can heal him. Maybe God will heal him. I don't know if he will. Just still feeling very up in the air. I wasn't by any means like, yes, absolutely, God's going to get him through this thing. Like that wasn't really there at the time. I remember not feeling desperate, but just feeling calm. Like I was sad and I was crying so much, but also like just feeling out of control and like, I can't do anything in this situation. All I can do is like shoot up a prayer and see what happens, you know, just acknowledging that I don't have any control here.
Yeah, 100%. And so what were the following days like after that first night, after the surgery?
A blur. So he survived the surgery, and doctors immediately told me, though, even though he's alive, he is depending on life support. Like he is breathing because machines are helping him breathe. We don't know that he can do that on his own. We don't think he can. So it was like they were trying to keep him alive on life support long enough for his family members to come in and say goodbye, because they had told me, the doctors had told me that he's not like, we don't know when we lost him, but we did. Those were their words to me. He's, I guess, alive medically, but brain dead, pretty much, like no responsiveness.
Do you remember how that felt? Like what was going through your mind when you thought that your husband was brain dead?
I was devastated. I remembered not being able to imagine any other life. Like, we were such an amazing fit for each other, and we had already had 10 wonderful years of marriage and expected to spend the rest of our lives together. And our kids were young, and it was just so absolutely jarring to, within 24 hours, have the entire future that you have been looking forward to and anticipating just like all of a sudden gone, you know? I was devastated, but also in like survival mode a bit, because we had our kids, and you know, it's like when you've got a 4-month-old who needs to nurse around the clock, like they kind of keep you in the moment a bit. You're like, okay, here's the next thing. He needs something. And then, yeah,
I can't even. We've got a 5-month-old, and it's our first baby. And
congratulations.
Thank you. He was IVF baby. And I can't imagine going through like a traumatic experience and having to nurse this child at the same time, especially because you had other kids as well, right? So like, yeah, that would have been brutal.
I feel like he kept me connected to reality in a way.
Yeah,
From
like
going
gave you something
far
to
off
do.
and yeah, gave me something to do. And just some physical comfort. Like, okay, he's still family, he's still here, he still, needs me and knows me. And yeah, but it was very much like feeling devastated and a bit dead inside too. Like you're all out of emotions, but they just keep coming in a way. And you're just going like from step to step, like, okay, the baby needs nursed. I guess I should eat something. Going through the motions, for sure.
Do you like forget to kind of like take care of yourself? Like you forget to, I imagine. So, so where do you go from there? Like, so you found that out. Do you like visit? Do you like, how long is it between then and later in when things when you start making kind of decisions? Like, how long is it that he's in this state?
For 10 days. It was about 10 days that he was on life support and unresponsive. And his family, his mom, his sisters, they'd all been able to come and see him and, say their goodbyes. And at that point, I remember feeling like just spread so thin emotionally. And our 2-year-old had mostly been at home the last 10 days and, with his grandparents and other people, and like just knowing that he needs me. He's going through this too. And since my husband and I had talked about what he would want if a situation like this were to happen, I knew that he would have, like I said, he was a strong Christian. He would have been like, he would have wanted me to unplug things and let him move on. He wouldn't have wanted me to keep him in some weird in-between state. So by day 10, I felt ready to turn off life support. And I had already thought through like, okay, are we going to do organ donation? And I'd already talked to our son and told him that his dad was gone, and thought about like who was going to be in the room, when we turned things off. And we really thought that he was dead. And so that day came, and I was at the bank with my dad, and we got a phone call that he had started responding. This was the day that I was going to turn everything off. And he had started responding. That one of the nurses had been in his room cleaning some things, and she noticed maybe like some fluttering and maybe his fingers moving a bit. And she called the doctor in, the neurosurgeon, to just take a look. And he held my husband's hand and was like, hey, if you're in there, squeeze my hand. And he did. And he said, okay, now let go. And then he did. And so he was understanding and able to follow, those commands. And so I got a phone call, that he's awake, he's responding. And I just dropped in the middle of the bank. I was so relieved and so overwhelmed that just kind of everything that we've been planning that I didn't want to do. So like turning things off, having the people in the room, that I wasn't going to have to do that anymore, that we weren't going to have to go through that. I just sobbed, and we went to the hospital immediately, and I was so excited to because no one had explained to me at this point, like what his condition was. You just hear your husband's awake, after being in a coma for 10 days. And you freak out and you're like, I can't wait to talk to him. I can't wait to hug him. And then I went in the room and it was just so bizarre. He still looked the same. Like he still looked unresponsive. And I could see that his hands were moving, but you would go and hug him and, his eyes weren't opening. And then the doctors kind of pulled me aside and they were like, okay, so he's responsive. He's awake, but he still had a lot of brain damage, and he's never going to be capable of meaningful human connection ever again, is what they told me. And they said, we're going to transition him to, rehabilitation and see what is possible. But this is going to be a marathon. It's a miracle, is what they told me, that he's awake. But we want you to have realistic expectations for what the future holds. I just thought they were full of, can I swear on this?
Yeah, definitely.
I thought they were full of shit. I was like, you don't know him. You don't know us. Like, we're so determined and motivated. And I think it was just too much for me to hear in the moment. I just didn't believe them. I don't know. I just didn't. Yeah.
Did you attribute any of the waking up or anything to prayer? Like, were people celebrating our prayers came true or anything?
Yeah, of course. People were just out of their minds. Like, it's a miracle. God healed him. God brought him back. People were freaking out, and we kind of became like poster children for healing and miracles after that, which has been difficult. It of itself has been a little wild. We can talk about my journey with all that later if you'd like.
Yeah, definitely. Because I can't imagine the roller coaster this would do to someone's faith. Because it's just, that's incredible. So okay, so you meet him. So you go into the room. What happens when you first kind of see him?
Nothing. I felt so grateful and excited and full of expectation, but very quickly could see that he wasn't the same. Like, he wasn't back. He wasn't dead, but that this was going to be a very different situation from the one that we were used to. Yeah. Because he wasn't speaking or opening his eyes, or it was really just a little bit of movement in the hands was all.
Yeah. Okay. So how long did it take, I guess, from there to when he woke up, for when he could, I guess, talk, look at you, have a conversation, things like that? How long did that take?
It was just a little bit at a time over a long period of time. So I think, I don't know, maybe a week later, they started having him, putting him in a machine that would help him stand up. It was like a bed that would then they would strap him down and it would rotate 90 degrees. And, he had to relearn everything. He couldn't even sit up by himself or breathe on his own. And he had tubes down his throat. And so I can't remember exactly how long it was before they took the tubes out. But they had to transition him from, I always get it mixed up, the respirator, the vent. They had to take him off of the more serious one and put him on the kind of middle, the stepping stone one. And when the tube came out, that, you can't talk if that's in there. And so then that was is he going to be able to say anything or make noises? And he couldn't for, I think it was maybe 9 months before he was able to really say anything. He could make some noises, He could push a button that said yes or a button that said no. But it was a very long time until we were able to kind of effectively communicate with each other because he had lost the ability to read, to write. Typing didn't work either. He had a condition called aphasia, which is really common with stroke survivors. There's a receptive aphasia where you don't understand what people are saying to you. We learned later he didn't really have that kind. He had the expressive kind where he could understand, but it was difficult for him to get words out. And it gets lost like on the way from his brain to his mouth. So he had to retrain all of those muscles. So once he was like communicating more, 9-10 months later, then it became more clear like how present he was in his mind. But until then, I was so firmly, I really believed that like he was fully there. He understood everything. Nothing had changed in his mind, and that he just couldn't get anything out, which didn't end up being the case. But yeah, I don't know. I think it was just too hard for me to accept in those first few months when doctors would tell me, hey, we don't know if he like recognizes you or like remembers your life together or even his values, things that were important to him. Like we would show him pictures of friends and family members, and he would act as if he recognized them. And I think that maybe he did, but it was just a very long time before we were able to really connect in a way where I knew like he understands me and I understand him. Yeah.
It's interesting how the brain, this must have like really shifted. I don't know if it did, but like for me, I used to think, I don't know what I thought, but I hear a lot of people say that we aren't our brains, or like they think consciousness is like in like your soul or something, like not just like Christians, but like a lot of Eastern thought and stuff. It's like your brain isn't, we're not like brains and machines, essentially, like where there's something else going on, consciousness or a soul or a spirit or something. But it's really hard to kind of to rectify that when you see things like what you're talking about, where someone might have, a brain injury and then they experience things differently. Like I've heard stories of there's a type of epilepsy, I think it is, and they can cut the connection between the two halves of the brain, and it's really risky surgery, but they do that. And then people can answer differently because one part of the brain works with motor skills and one part of the brain works with speaking. So you can ask them like something like, who would you vote for? And they'll point to someone and say someone else. And you can ask them actually like, do you believe in God? And they'll point to no or yes and say the opposite. So it's like,
wow.
And for me, it was like, does like half the brain go to heaven? Like, or like, like that, like at what stage there? Like, it's a really weird thing to think about. Yeah. It's, how did you go from that state until, because eventually he started talking and stuff again, right? And started being, how long was that process, and how did you deal with all of that?
Yeah. I think we continued to see him make progress for at least a year. It was between 1 and 2 years when he seemed to kind of plateau, maybe. And I mean, he was in, 3 different hospitals for months. I mean, I forget how many months, probably. It was in March when he had the aneurysm, and he came home in July. And then he had to go back later for, I think, another month. So it was, even when he wasn't staying in the hospital, like when it wasn't inpatient, still tons of therapy every day. So our lives became very busy. It was just a whirlwind of, caring for the kids and getting him to appointments. I mean, I didn't really have a social life anymore, and neither did he. It
Mhm.
really was just all like medical, medical, medical. uh,
Mhm.
and that's just how it needed to be.
Mm.
He obviously this terribly traumatic thing had happened, and we kept hearing that the first year is the most important in terms of recovery. And, he was very motivated. So
Mhm.
we just did absolutely everything that we could in that first year to help him regain as much independence as possible.
Mm.
It was exhausting for both of us.
Yeah. Oh, I bet. Did you
Yeah.
guys go to church at all? Like he was
Yeah,
the pastor of it.
he was.
Okay.
So I think like, I don't know, after maybe 4 or 5 months, he was able to go back. We tried to make that a thing that we would go every Sunday together once he was
Mhm.
living back at home.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay. And so what was it like when you could when you finally could have a conversation?
hmm Just different.
Yeah.
Aphasia, you have to speak slowly. You have to have a lot of patience. He could get the words out, but he needs a lot of time to do it.
Mhm.
So it's not going to be easy for him either if there's a lot going on around him. So like you have to kind of pick your moments
Mhm.
and just give it a lot of time and wait for answers. And it's very hard for him it's like a small portion of his vocabulary came back, and it's still like that today. So he's trying to use a very small pool of words to describe a lot of different things. Um,
Mm.
and over the years, he got smarter about that, like would use his phone to take pictures so I would know which thing he was talking about.
Mm.
But it was often like a guessing game, and it would be frustrating for both of us because we're already tired because we're running to these appointments all the time, and they're really taxing for him just physically and mentally. And um I was still nursing at that point and taking care of the two kids on my own, and I just remember us being very tired all the time, and uh me feeling guilty almost that I never felt like I had that time that he needed to have conversations. And
Mm.
I noticed he would often go, this is an aphasia thing too, is that they'll talk about things that are familiar. And so he would often revert to, if I would try to have a conversation about like something in the future, or maybe the way I'm feeling about something, we might be able to have like a sentence or two about it. But then he would revert back to talking about that he had an aneurysm and that's what it was like. And back then, I was not awake. And I know we've talked about this a lot of times. Is hard to kind of steer him into meaningful territory conversation wise.
Mm. And so I bet, like, at what stage did you realize, like, you said you were full of optimism at one stage. At what stage did you kind of realize that, like, oh shit, this like might not get better. This might my husband that I knew is no longer here.
Yeah.
What stage, and how did you deal with that?
Mhm. I think probably about 5 years in when the pandemic hit, uh, because then a lot of appointments weren't happening anymore.
Mhm.
So we're at home, and we did have more time for those conversations. Um, I
And
actually,
was he improving this whole time? Like at
no,
the 5 years?
I would say for the first year, we saw a lot of improvement. Like he went from being kind of in a vegetative, state to walking unassisted, which is incredible.
Mhm. Mhm.
And to being able to put sentences together in two languages. He's
Mm.
German, so that's his first language, and English came back about a week or two later. So uh, we saw a lot of improvement in that first year, especially, and then it kind of plateaued. And yeah, I think during the pandemic was when I really had started to question my faith more. I think I didn't have much faith in the medical community to get him any further than they had already gotten him.
No, yeah.
And so I put all my faith in God to, I'm like, well, if we're going to see any more progress, like he's going to be the one to do it. And in those 5 years, I had become fascinated with healing and miracles. Everyone had told me this was a miracle. This was, because God healed him. So I was like, this is incredible. Does God do this regularly? Like, why haven't I seen it yet? Would he heal other people? Like, can I help other people get healed if I pray the right way or something? I just had no idea. So I started reading a ton about it. And a couple years in, I started going to like classes about it. I really wanted to, not only help other people experience God's healing, but like, I was like, damn, if there's anything I can do to like, help my husband in this way, like I want to know. So I actually like became, I would just walk around the neighborhood, like after a year or two with friends, and we'd like pray for people and practice. And sometimes we'd see things happen. And I don't know how to explain that. Like, I think I would be an atheist by now. That's really the only thing that's holding me back. I'm like, how do you explain, a deaf person suddenly hearing seemingly as the result of, I just prayed for this person. I don't know yet. And it makes me a little bit angry because I don't want to believe anymore.
That's interesting.
Yeah. But I think.
Were you part of a, sorry to interrupt, were you part of a Pentecostal church? Like, did you speak in tongues and?
Non-denominational. I was part of the Vineyard movement of churches. So they're the Vineyard.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
They're all over the world. And there's a lot of them here in Central Ohio. So I was on staff at a church a couple years into this whole thing, and just kind of like overseeing the prayer stuff. And I was very active, like in praying for people in the church and outside of the church, and praying for my husband, and just had a lot of hope. And then when the pandemic hit, I kind of realized, I don't know, like I had to confront this reality that like, okay, I'm seeing things happen on the street, in my church, but why isn't God doing this for my husband? Like, why would he bring him back halfway? Like, why would he have him live in this state? Why would he do this to our children? Like, I start to have so many questions. And I think that was the first time that I started to get discouraged faith-wise and entertain the possibility that if there is a God, he might not fix this. He might not heal my husband, and we could be in this for, the next 30 years or so, until we So I don't think that I'd thought super seriously about it until the pandemic, what that could do for us.
Yeah. You mentioned just pivoting just briefly, but you mentioned that you don't want to believe in God now. Why is that?
I think Christians can be a little weird. No, that's not the main reason. It's so many things. At the moment, I don't rule out the possibility of there being some other being out there. I don't know that I have much evidence that he loves me and my family and cares about us. I don't know that I want that much to do with him if he does exist. I think, I have friends who, it's interesting when I talk about this with Christians, they'll be like, when I even mention that I'm having a crisis of faith or doubts, they'll be like, oh, honey, God loves you. I think it's such a terrible argument for believing in him. Because I'm like, okay, I have friends who say that they love me. And and they reach out. Like, I know they love me because they're here. Like, I can talk with them, and they are a very present part of my life. Like, there's evidence of that. And I feel pretty removed from God. So I'm like, okay, maybe he loves me. I don't know, but I would expect to see like more evidence of that. I don't know.
Mhm.
That's one reason. Like, I don't want to, as with a friend, like, I'm probably going to invest in a friendship as far as they seem to want to invest with me. I'm not going to like take it all the way if they don't seem all that interested. And for me, it's kind of the same with God. Like, I spent so many mornings, I would have my quiet time, my devotional time every morning. I would go into my office with my cup of coffee and read the Bible. And then I'd get down on my knees and I would beg him for my family to like change something. And I had come to a point during the pandemic where I was like, okay, maybe you're not going to change my husband's condition. Maybe that's not going to happen, but change me. Like, give me more patience, give me more love, give me more wisdom about like how to help him have the richest life possible. And I just continued to feel kind of like a dum-dum and overwhelmed. And yeah, I just didn't experience him as a God who answered that prayer after all of my begging and pleading and attempts. I don't know. I experience him as pretty distant. But also, I really do believe that love is an action. And when I look at, I think I've definitely lost faith in the church, in the Christian church.
Mhm.
I don't know if I've lost faith in God. I definitely have lost faith in the church. I've seen so much ugliness, and I can honestly say that like my friends who are not believers are so much more beautiful to me on the inside. Like, the way that they treat people. What's that phrase? There's no hate like Christian love or something.
Yeah, I know. It's so accurate. Do you know, I have a funny story about this where I was really depressed, and when I was a youth pastor, I lost the job as a youth pastor. I was really depressed, and I this one night what happened? It was something like my friend had some vodka, and I started sneaking vodka and like drinking it before bed so I could get to sleep or something.
Yeah.
And I'm only like 19 or 20 or something, and I had some, and then it was the night of my staff party. Anyway, I had a few drinks and I went out with everyone. It was the first time I kind of went clubbing. It wasn't like a huge thing or whatever, but I felt horrible afterwards. Like, it was a staff party, but a couple of people went out for a drink, so I just kind of continued with them. I felt so horrible about it. I went to church through the day when all the staff were having lunch, and I knew all the staff because I was friends with them all, and I was staff with them once. So I come in and I was going to have lunch with them, and the senior pastor's the associate pastor's wife comes up to me and says, I heard you had a big night the other night. And I was just like, oh yeah, it wasn't my fault. She's like, oh sure, it wasn't your fault. And I was like, well, and she was like really judgy. And I was like, man, I came here for encouragement because I needed to like kind of make amends for the mistakes I made. And then I go sit on the couch, and someone else is there, and he's like, oh, I heard he had a big night the other night and all this stuff. And I'm like, whoa. And like, everyone was just judging me so strong. And then I was like, screw this place. And I kind of finished my lunch, and then I went back home, and everyone was sitting in the garage smoking weed. And I didn't smoke weed, but they were sitting there, and they're like, you're awesome, man. Don't like listen to any of those guys. Like, you're cool. Like, and they just like so encouraging and uplifting. And I was like, this is so backwards. Like, I went to church for help, and I come here, and everyone who's smoking weed is like the friendliest.
Yes.
Yeah.
I left church about a year and a half ago. After a sexual misconduct scandal. I'm still participating in the investigation like over a year later. But
what?
Yeah, whoa. I haven't talked about that on TikTok yet.
Can you talk about that or not?
Oh, a bit, yeah. Really? So the thing that really made me leave, I mean, I already was frustrated because I felt like I would go into church week after week, like, hey, we're not doing well. We're exhausted. I'm at the end of my rope. I need help with my kids. Like, I want guys in their life. Like, they need they need men around to like teach them how to do things and have conversations with them. And like, I need help fixing things at my house. And like, I don't know how to, do this thing on my car. And I feel like a dumb blonde talking about these things, but I just didn't know. A lot of things I didn't know, and I just needed help. And, help with him, like getting him to appointments, getting him to social things. And I felt like I kept going in and telling them like, look, we are hurting. We're stretched too thin. I'm seriously depressed. This is really hard. And just like, oh, thoughts and prayers, thoughts and prayers, thoughts and prayers. I'm like, that's nice. It's not what we need.
It makes me so angry.
Yeah. But yeah, I was already kind of in that place. And then, so I was a worship leader at a mega church for a while. I've led worship my whole life, and went to our national conference to just attend and do worship there. And was there with a group of other worship leaders from our church. The one that I have been a part of is kind of like I think we're the biggest vineyard church in the world, and kind of a flagship church. Like a lot of churches would look to us for things. And so like there was a big group of us that went together to participate at this national conference. And one night at the Airbnb, I was alone with one of the pastors. I didn't know that we were going to be the only ones in the house. He knew. But didn't say anything. And like I was outside in the hot tub and he came out, and we've been friends. We were good friends. Like I didn't think anything of it. I was like, oh, come on, man. And he was like, I don't know. I'm like, it's fine. You sit over there. Like, well, he said, well, I'll put out my laptop and watch a movie. I'm like, sounds good. But he was drinking, and over the course of the night, just like kept reaching for me and asking me to snuggle up to him. And I was just like, oh my God, like I've got to get out of here. And we went into the house, and like he continued, and I just told him like, you need to go to bed. And I'm going in my room, and I locked the door and went to sleep, and like got up a few hours later and left town, went back home. But like, he was a good friend. And when people drink, they do stupid things. He never touched me because I was able to, get away. But like, I can forgive people for doing dumb things under the influence of alcohol. A few months went by. I know it sounds dumb, but like, I just knew that if I said something, it would disrupt the balance at the church, on the worship team. And like I said, we were the biggest one in the world, and like putting out new albums and things, and people are like watching us. And there were good things happening at the church, and I didn't want to mess everything up with an accusation. He had like gotten more and more distant, and I was doing pop music, at the same time I was doing the worship music. And then they raised some concerns about my pop music, and I was off the team then while I went through discernment period or something. And I had to do weird things. David like signed a release that they could talk to my counselor about me. And like my parents and my friends were like, what are you doing? And I'm like, oh, the worship team is everything. Like church is everything. It's fine. They love me. Like, but months went by of me like participating in their discernment process. And I wasn't going to give up doing music. I was pursuing sync licensing at the time, like as a means to support my family. And the months went by, and like there was still no plan to bring me back into the fold, kind of. And I hadn't done anything terribly wrong. And I kept hearing, you lack discernment, you lack discernment, you lack discernment. And one day I just blew up, and I was like, oh, you want to talk about lacking discernment? Let me tell you this. And I was just venting to a friend, but then he went and reported what I'd said, what happened. And then they launched an investigation. And like I said, I could forgive, people do dumb things when they're drinking. But when he was confronted by our pastors, he said that it wasn't true, that I made it up and I didn't have evidence. And that was the breaking point for me. Like, okay, this pastor who's supposed to represent Jesus to me, who's supposed to care for me and my family, is throwing me under the bus to save his reputation, to save his name, to save his job. I can't do this anymore. Like, how can you go into church week after week and be led by someone who you know is a liar, who you know tried to take advantage of you? I just couldn't do it. So I left, and I didn't know if I'd come back. I thought maybe I'll go to another church. I just knew that like so much had happened in our lives over the past few years, and the church had consistently not been a place of refuge for us and support. And I was just like, okay, this isn't it. Like, we're dying over here. And I need to figure our lives out, kind of. So yeah, it's been a year and a half since then. And the investigation has stalled because, I don't know, the church has issues with some things in the final report. And so now they've got their lawyers talking to each other. It's just messy, and I don't know if it will ever be resolved. And at this point, I'm like, it doesn't affect my daily life anymore. You guys do what you're going to do. Like, I've decided for myself that I don't want to be a part of that. And I'm going to focus on my kids and things that do affect my day to day.
Wow. That's oh, well, I'm sorry that you went through that. That sounds it's hard because this is this is the problem, because there are so many people who are in these positions of like power, and it's like there's a difference between like someone coming onto you at a bar versus like your boss coming onto you. Like your boss coming onto you is inappropriate because they hold like a position of power and stuff.
Yeah.
But it's just when it's mixed with religion, and it comes
really
has more of it's a sinister, definitely a sinister I think. One of the things that one of the reasons the reason I started this podcast is I interviewed my friend who was in a similar situation to you, where in not similar at all, but similar in one regard, in that he was I met him in ministry college, and he was gay. He's been gay his whole life, and he was closeted for 45 years, and he prayed countlessly to remove this thing from him, and to remove the gay. And after 45 years, it wasn't working, and he was considering suicide. And I at the time I realized, like, oh shit, like, what if the church gives up on the doctrine of like being gay is bad, like they gave up on like women having to wear headscarves when they pray, or like they give up on all these other things that are in the Bible, in the New Testament, that we just like kind of like, oh, that was for a time. Like, what if the church does that, and he's wasted his entire life? And so we had a conversation. He's out now, and he's in a long-term relationship, and he's like happy. But it's like, and I still say that he would call himself a Christian, I think, but he's been very hurt by the church. But just the shit that he went through with the church, it was beyond disgusting. And for me, that was a big thing that made me realize, like, the church isn't a force for good, for sure. Regardless of the question of whether or not God exists, I think the church causes a lot of harm to people. But he was in the same spot as you, where he was praying all the time, just trying, like, help me, like pouring out his heart, like crying and all that stuff. And so eventually you guys got divorced, right? Can you lead us up to that part of the story?
Sure. Yeah. Gosh. So kind of over the years, the climate in our household had just changed. Like, between he and, my husband and my ex-husband and I, it wasn't like a marriage relationship anymore. I was very much his caregiver. And we were friendly, like, but it was really difficult seeing the toll that it took on our kids. Just kind of not knowing what they could ever expect from him. He slept a lot and, wasn't a super active part of their lives anymore. Like, he's a wonderful person. And when he's awake, he's like the warmest, kindest guy, never like angry or threatening or anything like that. I would never worry about the safety of our kids. But I wouldn't say that he was very present in their lives. And, I would see them being sad about that and also being confused when he would have these, periods of like, he would get obsessive about things, like a carpet that had a spot on it, or, the pins in the junk drawer. There was one night where he realized they didn't have caps on them and drove him nuts and like wanted to get the whole family involved, like looking for the caps for these pins. And, it was always something like that. And I could see it freaking the kids out. And I felt like, the solution there is not to just divorce him and ship him off somewhere else where he's not my problem. The solution is to find him the quality of care that he needs to overcome those episodes, right? And I was so stretched then at that point in our lives by, bringing up the kids. Like, he's there, but I'm a functionally single mom at that point. If they need to be taken somewhere, they need to have conversations. I'm doing all that on my own. And I'm trying to, back then, support us financially. I was just working really late hours, early mornings. And then on top of that, I'm a part of, participating in this misconduct investigation and didn't have much support. Like, I had my parents and my brother, but like had just lost my entire community. Like, they didn't all follow me from church. They're like, I don't know, Kim's not here anymore. So that hurt, people who you think are your closest, dearest friends. And just, it's weird when you leave a church, how you don't realize how much that binds you to other people. You think that the friendship is capable of existing. That's what I hope.
Oh yeah.
But it's just doesn't seem to be the case.
Nick, one of the deep drink guests before, Nicole, she went from being a pastor to being a porn star.
I want to watch that one. I saw
and she's been on the Purity Culture panel, which I recommend, and stuff as well. But she she went from like being really good friends with these people, like thinking they were her best friends, to like they refusing to talk, like no contact. And she's like, what? Like,
it's very
it's very conditional, it's very
for sure.
Yeah.
I was the lowest I'd ever been in my life, and was even having thoughts of suicide because I felt like I was failing everyone in my family, like in taking care of him in the way that he really needed. It would have meant that I wasn't able to take care of my kids. If I just focus on my kids, then he's the one who's getting the short end of the stick and not getting the care that he needs. And I'm not even thinking about myself in that equation. Like, that's just me trying to take care of them. Like, what about taking care of me so that I can do any of this for the long term? And so it just seemed like us being married and living in the same house together, we were all, the four of us, just slowly deteriorating together. And I started to remember like conversations that we'd had before the stroke, and just, man, he was such a great husband. He was such a great father. He loved us. And not that he didn't love us afterward. He's absolutely did. But like, he was one of the most selfless people I ever met. And because we'd had conversations about this, I knew that he would have wanted us. He said that to me before, like, if anything happens to me, I would want you to move on and for you and the kids to have the best life possible, the most normal life possible. And I kind of ignored that for years because I was like, no way. I can't I can't abandon him, you know? And I've been accused a lot over the past, couple months as I've opened up about this on social media of abandoning my disabled husband when he needed me most. And it's just not true. Like, we were together for 7 years after his aneurysm. We got him back to a very independent state, but it just was never the same afterward. And none of us were really getting what we needed. None of us were really happy. And, I started to wonder if letting him go was the best thing for him because, I could never imagine putting him in some facility, just like dumping him somewhere like that. I could never have done that. But he has an amazing family in Germany, his sisters, his mother, who is a retired doctor. He has friends there that he's known his whole life. And they're all faith-filled people, who can support that thing that's so important to him. And so I started to wonder if that was the best situation for him. If loving and honoring him, till death do us part meant letting him go into a situation that is not what we would have wanted when we set out on this thing, but that it was what he needed. I just started to feel so wrong, so guilty about denying him services and attention that he really needed, because I just couldn't do it. What if there are people who can do it, and they want to do it? Let's have that. So I opened up about that to my parents and to his mom and his sisters, and we started to have some conversations about that. And all of us together, decided that that's what we wanted to do, that the best thing for him was to go back to Germany and live with his sister and let his mom kind of take on that caregiver role and let me kind of recover and go to counseling and be there for the kids in a way that I haven't been able to be there for them for the 7 years. So yeah, we separated last year. He moved in the fall, and he's doing great. We're still in contact. He calls us every week, tries to talk to the kids most weekends, and we're going to go visit in a couple months. Yeah, our divorce became official in May. So we're officially divorced now. But
that's recent.
Yeah, it's very recent. I
Wow.
posted that first TikTok that blew up. I had like 200 followers at that point, and I was just kind of trying to process life with people and was like, I got divorced today from a really amazing person. Woke up the next morning with millions of people. What happened? Very bizarre.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. But yeah, it's been recent, and I feel like we're all still processing, but I am confident, every time I pick up the phone and talk to him and hear how he's doing, that we made the right decision. The kids are opening up more, and I can just tell that they feel more at home and settled and comfortable, and he's excited when I talk to him about the things that he's getting to do over there. I feel rested for the first time in a long time, and I just have margin for things I didn't have margin for before. Yeah, I like to frame it as we're still a family. We're just a different kind of family. Our relationship status has changed, but that doesn't mean that we're not a regular part of each other's lives. Doesn't mean we don't love each other anymore.
Yeah. Wow, what an incredible journey that you've been through, and tragic, and it seems like you've made the best of a very bad situation. Yeah, geez. So I guess I'm kind of interested in how like now looking back, like how has this all affected your faith on the broader spectrum of things?
Mhm. Well, first of all, I don't think our current situation would have ever happened, like, if I hadn't left church, because in the Christian world, it's so ingrained in you from a young age that, you get married, you stay married. Unless someone's
Mm,
abusive, something crazy
yeah.
happens, then maybe, but, like, I don't think I would have even dared to consider that possibility. Um,
Mm,
and that in and of itself is like, if I were still like a totally committed and invested Christian, what would that mean for us? Like, that
mm,
we would still all be miserable and not getting what we need because God said.
mm,
And if God said, then like, what does that say about Him? Um,
mm.
and how He loves us. It's really shaken me.
When you say you said before that one of the last things that like kind of like holding you in the perspective that there is a God is the miracles that
Yeah,
you've seen.
yeah,
Can we talk a little bit about that?
sure. Mhm.
What's I guess what's the most impressive miracle that you've seen?
Yeah, I talked about that one on TikTok recently. There was a younger guy who had cancer in his throat, and it had spread up to his ear, um, and he had lost hearing in his ear as a result. And he also had trouble with his speech. Like, he had to take medication to help him be able to get words out. And on some days he still couldn't. But we prayed for his ear. Um, and the first time it didn't take, which was like a common thing. And then we were taught to like, well, then you pray again, as long as they're willing, you pray again. And I think it was a
Was it
second.
was this out in the street?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
um, Yeah, and then he suddenly could hear, and he was absolutely shocked, and we were absolutely shocked. Which I feel like if you really believe in miracles, you shouldn't be shocked when that kind of thing's happening. We just expect it, but I don't know, we were pretty surprised. Maybe we didn't have much faith in ourselves.
Hmm.
But that was probably the most shocking one. There was another one with a woman, it's a homeless woman who couldn't see, and
Mhm.
I didn't pray for her, but a couple of the other guys did. And then she was like, she could see it was like blurry, like her vision came back, but blurry. And she could see signs across the street, but couldn't read them yet. So they prayed for her again. And then it became like the words on the signs became more clear and she could see colors. And um, I think she was a bit out of her mind. And so the guys were like, is she messing with us? Like, is this real? And then I don't know, they took her across the street to buy her a coffee or something. And the waitress came out. Um, and I guess the waitress knew she was blind. And they had some interaction where, she was describing the waitress or something. It was clear that in that conversation that she actually could see. And so, things like that. And that's a pretty common thing, like in vineyard churches, like we were always very big about like expecting miracles and praying for people, not getting crazy with it, not like declaring, but just like
Mm.
very normal, simple, short prayers for people and kind of putting the pressure on God to do something, never telling people, oh, you weren't healed because you didn't have enough faith or any crap like that. But
Mhm.
yeah, I don't know how to reconcile those things. Um,
Mm.
just started to like ask that question and
Yeah, it's a big question. Hey, I had similar thoughts when I was deconstructing my faith. Um, yeah, like I guess the question that I asked myself was, if someone of a different religion had a similar experience, would that be evidence of their religion?
Mhm.
Like, what would you say to something like that? So if like you saw a Buddhist healer heal someone or a Hindu healer heal someone or something like that, what would you say about that? Like, what would you think?
I don't know. I don't know. What I would be like, cool, that rocks. Good for them. Like that would be my natural response. Trying to explain it because it's like every religion, you know, the big one, they're like, oh no, it's our God. Yours isn't real.
Yeah. The rest is silly
So
made up nonsense, but my God is real. Yeah.
yeah. I don't know, man. And I feel like that's going to be the answer is just, I don't know. I was having lunch with an atheist friend of mine last week, and I was talking to him about this. He's kind of become my go-to in these situations. And I was like, what would you say it? Like, how would you explain the miracles? And he's like, I don't know. I'm like, that's kind of cool. And I feel like that's what faith is. Like, if you can explain it and give all this evidence and like, then why is it faith? It's just following the facts. But I don't know if I have enough faith for that. I don't know.
Yeah, it's like, well, it's like if you, this is how I view it. It's like if we don't have an answer yet, that's the answer. Like that's all we can say. Like,
Yeah.
You just get comfortable with saying, I don't know how that happens. Like, think about some like really well studied things like optical illusions. Like, how can we see something that tricks our brain in that way? That's like a really bizarre thing to happen. But we accept like, oh yeah, optical illusion. There's nothing spiritual about an optical illusion. There's nothing religious about them. But you show that to someone, 500 years ago, and they might think there's something, going on. If a witch was showing it to you, so you kind of primed to kind of put the context with it. Or, you see people at the Taylor Swift concerts lately, and they're like literally talking about having spiritual experiences at these Taylor Swift concerts, and it's like, well, if that was a religious concert, almost everyone would be having these experiences. Emotional illusions, are there such a thing? Can we have experiences like that? And have you seen the documentary by Darren Brown called Miracles for Sale?
No, but someone just told me about it and I wrote it down.
That's I wonder, can I show you a clip from that? I hope it doesn't demonetize my channel, but I can show you a quick clip if that works.
Perfect.
Okay, all right. Let me it's this, I remember this kind of blew me away when I first watched it. So the context is he gets someone to he fakes this preacher, and he gets them to move into the faith healings like realm, and to preach and to perform miracles, but they're all just not miracles. And so this is him doing street healings in the wild, as you say. So I'll just I hope I'll show you this clip. I hope it works. Can you hear it?
Yeah.
Cool.
Very subjective thing, whether it's the adrenaline of a big show or just somebody telling them with enough confidence that the pain is gone.
There are many videos online of street faith healers supposedly curing the sick. So on a cold Dallas morning, I take our former scuba diver out to see if he can do the same. This will be more of a challenge than working with a receptive congregation, but I think Nathan's ready to do it.
Any ailment? Tell me about it right now. Pastor James, you got any pains? Have you got any pains?
I got pain in my leg. I had surgery right here. They said it was in that pain. I had a rod put in, and always when it get cold, it's always...
So you got a plate in there? You got a plate?
Yes, sir, right here.
The first person we find is in persistent pain from a metal plate in his leg.
Hurts a lot, right? So when you get up, I bet when you get up from a chair or from here, you got to push yourself up with your arms. Whereas when you were younger, you just sprung up, right? Yeah, right. I'm going to put my hands on your leg, okay? And I want you to think about the pain you're in right now, okay? And that's a 10, okay?
Nathan knows the techniques. This is his moment of truth.
Dear Lord, this man's pain in his leg is causing so much pain. That plate's so cold. You're warming it up right now, Lord. You're warming it up right now. To feel the man shaking in your power. And to feel the man shaking in your power, Lord. You get that pain right out. You get that cold right out. You get that till you feel it.
Yes.
You feel it.
What's it like? What does it feel like? What can you feel? It's a tingling feeling in my leg now.
Stand right up. Stand right up. You don't have to push up. You don't see? You didn't have to push up this time, right? Remember we were talking about you had to push
The
up?
man is very moved and staggered that his pain has gone.
You told me that pain was a 10 before, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. What's that pain in that left leg right now? It's reduced, hasn't it? That pain, 0. High five. You got any aches and pains from what? Your back, lower back? So I want you to remember, what I want you to remember right now is how bad that pain is right now. Imagine that's a level 10, okay? Lord, let the power of your Holy Spirit pass through this man. Let that pain be gone so this man can move freely. Amen. I can feel that heat. Can you feel that? Because I can feel there's a lot of heat. It's all here. Stand up for me. So it's a 10 before, right? So it's a 10. So what is it now?
3, 2.
3, 2. Can you touch your toes? You do that so easily?
Did you do that before, properly?
No,
You couldn't do that before.
no. I had a car wreck like 2 months ago.
You were in a car wreck 2 months ago and you've had a pain in your back since then. What did it feel like?
It's gone.
Praise be to God.
These people aren't really being healed, but they are experiencing pain relief brought about by suggestion. Nathan heightens their expectation and they respond accordingly, their minds, at least for a while, not feeling any pain.
Put your hand on top of mine.
It works on every single volunteer.
Can you feel that? Because I can feel something happen there.
You feel that? Yeah.
Yeah? What I want you to do, extend your legs, put your feet into my hands.
He even tries the old leg lengthening routine,
So this leg is by an inch. Can you see that difference?
telling people their problems are caused by having one leg shorter than the other, and then manipulating a shoe to create the illusion that a leg is lengthened.
Stand up, walk.
A favorite trick performed by healers who claim that it's real.
Jesus has healed you, right?
Afterwards, we tell all the people Nathan healed the true nature of what we're doing.
This guy isn't really a faith healer.
We carry on finding more people and keep getting the same positive results.
What did you got to do before?
So with a 100% success rate, Pastor James has healed the sick.
I'm astonished at how effortless it is.
Yeah.
This is like
Crazy,
my
right?
my past life, man.
It's incredible, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's incredible. Nothing there is like super amazing. Like, a few people are like, oh, my leg isn't sore anymore.
Sure.
But there's a fantastic website called why doesn't God heal amputees.com. And
Okay.
it's a fantastic look at this, because it's like you hear healings about, like, people receiving sight or receiving hearing again, but we never see someone's like leg grow back or conjoined twins separate. Something that should be perfectly easy for an all-powerful, all-loving God, but just doesn't seem to happen.
Mhm.
Yeah. What do you think about the problem of suffering and the problem of evil?
Sure. I used to think that it was caused by people or Satan himself, because the Bible does say that he has legitimate power on the earth. And so I would always attribute it to that. I mean, before my husband's stroke, I didn't think about it that much, honestly.
Mm.
Afterward, I really wanted to know. Because how can you pray for healing for someone to God if God's the one who struck them down with whatever it is, right?
Mm.
So I had to know that God wanted their healing, that he was as much for it as, I was or they were. So I was always like, okay, our own sin, our own choices led to this broken world that we live in. Or, Satan attacked someone and that's why bad things happen.
Mm.
God gave us free will, and as much as he would like to intervene, he doesn't, because until Jesus comes back and makes everything right again, this is kind of the world that we've created. So that's how I processed it for a long time. As recently as like a few months ago, I read this book. I think it's just called Free Will. It's by Sam Harris. Sam Harris.
Oh, yeah.
I've become a big fan.
Yeah. His book Waking Up. If you're wanting to still have some sort of a spiritual-esque feeling, or like his book Waking Up was really helpful to me.
Okay.
Yeah. Like it actually goes into the brain. That goes into the brain thing. That was
Ooh, I would probably love it then. Yeah. I read his book on free will, and he talks about, I don't have the studies here, but I can send them to you if you want to link them in show notes or something, about just how, if you hook someone up to electrodes, that the researchers, they can tell that you've made a decision before you are aware that you've made a decision. You know, that you decide to like get up or like go take a drink or whatever it is. And that really started poking at my free will theodicy worldview. Because, you know, what if free will doesn't exist? What if that's not a thing? What does that mean for, you know, if God's real and he's up there and it's just kind of like being a gentleman in some weird roundabout way by letting us do what we want to do.
Well, this actually gets the biggest problem with, I think, this whole conversation is we haven't got an answer to consciousness yet, right? Like we don't know what consciousness even really is, except it seems to start in the brain. That's what we think, but we don't even know that, like, for sure. Like I think you can make educated guesses, but I mean, I argue with people about this. We have a few friends about this all the time, but so the way I view things is like, if I drive a stake through my head, I'm going to stop living. Like my conscious experience will stop. If I take Valium, I'll calm down. If I take, you know, some sort of stimulant, I'll become more awake. Like there's things like there's chemical interactions happening inside my brain, and it affects my conscious experience. And so the way I kind of see things is like I see us living in kind of a deterministic universe for the most part. So like imagine there's a rock and there's on a hill. You push this rock down the hill. If you know every variable, you know the velocity, the gravel, the friction, the wind, everything, you can predict with 100% certainty exactly where that rock is going to land 100% of the time. And you could run an experiment 1 billion times over and it would land in the same spot. I think that our brains are just a much more complicated version of a rock and a hill. And I believe that the universe is a much more complicated version of a rock and a hill. Like, so like, you know, if I experience something that I don't like, I'll usually, because of my chemistry, my brain chemistry, I'll try and remove myself from that situation. Like these are just things that we do. But it's so, yeah, it gets really interesting, because then you're like, well, how, this is the thing that really spun me out, and maybe I can get your thoughts on it, is like, did Adam and Eve have free will? Like the Bible says that they did, but were they confined by their brain chemistry? Like were they trapped in by their brain chemistry? Like could God have made their brains different in a way that they chose not to eat the fruit?
Yeah.
Could he have done that? And like, because it seems that like if God knew ahead of time that the conditions of the Garden of Eden and the conditions of their brains and the condition, like every condition, you know, this rock in the hill, that universe, every condition would lead to them eating the fruit, because he's
omniscient.
Omniscient.
Yeah,
he's omniscient, so he knows everything. So if he knows the future and he still chose to create them the way that they are, how did they have any choice in the matter? They couldn't have had any choice, right? Like God could never be surprised. Like God, like when they ate the fruit, God was never like, whoa, like I can't believe it. Like
what the hell happened there?
But at the same time, God's walking through the garden and he's like, where are you? I can't find you. So like he can't be omniscient as well. So it's like it's you know, this gets really deep into the theology and Bible history memes. But yeah, what are your thoughts on free will and determinism? Like, where are you at with all that?
I don't know. I'm so new to it. I feel like I'm still just processing the very fact that we might not have free will.
Yeah.
And just beginning to wade into like the implications of that on many levels. Yeah. So I don't think I have a good answer. I have heard, you know, as far as the Adam and Eve thing goes, that I know that there are some people who are like, well, that didn't really happen. Like that's just like a folk tale or something, you know, to talk about the way that the earth was created. And some people are like, oh no, it absolutely happened. I don't know, but I absolutely understand what you're saying about, why? And that again, that might be one of those things where I'm just like, I don't know why he would do that. He's a butthead. That's why.
There's actually, I think you'd really enjoy an episode coming up with Dr. Matthew Mongo, and there's an episode I've already done with Dr. Josh Bowen, and they talk about the influences in the Hebrew Bible. So like you think about like, Dr. Josh, he ran this, he used to be a pastor.
Okay.
And he was running this group for people who are trying to learn more about the Bible. And he asked them, he said, who's the Bible experts here? And people raised their hands. And he said, okay. He said, what scripture is this? Where is it? What book is it in? And he read a scripture, and everyone said, it's in Ezekiel. Okay, read another scripture. Where's this story? It's in Matthew. And people were raising their hand. And then he read out something and said, where's this? And they said, that's the story of Noah. And he said, actually, that's not. That's the Epic of Gilgamesh. So that's pre-Bible. That's like 1,200 years pre the Bible, and it has like a giant flood and a dove going out and collecting it's the whole thing.
Yeah.
But it's actually more interesting because what it's actually, this is what Josh told me, it's a polemic against Mesopotamian civilization. So when Israel was in captivity by the Babylonians, they had this idea of like perfect Mesopotamian society. This and it's all towards civilization, and it's all towards building this amazing thing. There's a theory, and it's pretty well accepted, that what the Israelites were doing is they were like, okay, well, we're going to write our own story, but we're going to flip everything. So like they rewrite the story of the Epic of Gilgamesh, but about Noah, and everything in the first primeval history in Genesis is all about moving away from civilization. So Abraham takes away from Sodom and Gomorrah, which got destroyed. And he lives in tents throughout his days, and it ends at the Tower of Babel when God's like, this city is evil, and destroys it. And casts everyone to. So it's a polemic. It was like a form of poetry that the Israelites, who were in captivity by the Babylonians, used to deal with the fact that they're like, no, screw these Mesopotamians. Like, we've got our own story and our own thing. And so it becomes so much more interesting, and people are going to fact check me. I might have got a lot of that wrong, but if you go watch the episode, it's a long time since I did that episode, but it's just cool to see that. It's the Sumerian flood. That's
fascinating.
But yeah, when you look at the history behind a lot of these Bible stories, it's like, for me, it helped me, I guess, let go of a lot of them as truth, like you said, Adam and Eve and stuff like that. Or learning about evolution. Do you believe in evolution, or you got thoughts about evolution, or?
I probably would have fallen into the camp of yes, evolution is real, and that it was overseen by God or something.
Yeah. That's theistic evolution. Yeah, that's
yes.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, so learning about all that just kind of blew my mind. I want to quickly, before we kind of wrap up, I do have some questions for you. But before we wrap up, I want to shout out your stuff. So you have an amazing singing career and amazing musician career. So you're on Spotify.
I am.
And Good Kid is an amazing song, and Friendly Fire, they're two of my favorite songs. But definitely recommend, the links in the description. Go check out, you got TikTok, you've got YouTube, you've got all your links are there. But definitely on Spotify, Apple Music, go check out your songs, and obviously rate them 5 stars. Can you even rate songs? But anyway, listen, they're good stuff. Trust me, they're good stuff. And I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about Thunderstruck.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So when my TikTok blew up, there were a lot of people who, just judged me. But I was able to ignore most of that because my inboxes were flooded by people who were like, oh my gosh, I have been in such a similar situation, and I felt so alone in it. And I didn't know who to talk to, who to go to for, advice. No one really understands. And so I was like, I wanted to make a place for people to connect, just to help them find each other more quickly, because you're very short on time when you're in, those traumatic situations. So I made this website, and I'm slowly going through all my DMs right now and like inviting people to join the group. It's just a free online community that I've created for people in crisis to talk to each other. Is basically it. You know, we post in there about books we found helpful. We have a couple chats going. There's a section about faith, you know, just the impact that crisis has on that. And we share memes. We have a section dedicated to our support animals. It's great. It's a lot of fun. Yeah.
So did you make that yourself, or did you like did you do web design? Like
I think if I hadn't become a musician, I would have been a graphic designer. I love it so much. So I do a lot. I do all my own graphic stuff.
That's great. And of course, and it looks awesome. And of course, go follow your TikTok, which is just full of amazing clips. Especially, I'm just trying to find the one. It's the one that kind of blew up. 17 million. Is this
that's the one right there.
17 million. That's incredible.
That was the one I woke up to the next morning, and I was like, "What is happening?" Person today. We were together for 18 years, and I loved him. My biggest fear was that something.
Sorry, I didn't know the audio was coming through, but yeah, that's incredible. So that what were we saying? That was the one you did the morning of.
That was the one I did. I recorded it the day our divorce was finalized, and then went to bed, and the next morning woke up and like millions of people had watched it and were asking what happened. I was like, oh shoot, I guess I better tell the rest of the story.
That's incredible. Well, thank you so much for coming on. It's been awesome chatting to you. I'd love to stay in touch, and we've connected on Instagram, and it'd be good to stay in touch, and I'll learn more about your kind of your deconstruction process, regardless of, I'm not going to stop being friends with you if you become a state Christian or something. Like, I don't care. In fact, some of my, me and Michael Jones of Inspiring Philosophy, we text all the time, but he's a really hardcore apologist or Christian. So yeah, I'm not like some, I know some, I'm not like the old church people, is what I'm saying. But yeah, I'd be really interested to hear what where you kind of like as you explore these ideas. It's super interesting for me. So I have a couple of quick questions that I haven't done for a while, but I thought I'd round out this interview with them, if that's okay. And I don't know, you haven't seen many episodes, so you probably haven't heard of these. So first question is, what is the most plausibly true religion that you don't believe in?
Oh my gosh, look at you go. That I don't believe in?
Yeah.
I don't know, man. Can I say atheism? Is that a religion? It's not.
I'm not going to let you do that. So many people, and I'm not even going to let you say Buddhism. It's got to be a theistic religion. It's got to have a god.
I think any religion that has multiple gods, because I'm just like, people fight so much and can't even get along. Like how yeah. I just don't believe. I don't buy it. Yeah.
That's cool. So regarding, I guess, this question is going to be hard because, okay, regarding your Christian faith now, or like where you're kind of at, what if anything would change your mind? So that's the question I normally ask. What would get you to go, you know what, I don't believe in God at all?
Yeah, someone give me a scientific explanation for I feel like I have a scientific explanation for the sensation of the Holy Spirit. But yeah, what about the healings and the miracles that can be like verified by a doctor? If someone could explain that to me, I'd be out.
Okay. I know that I don't know why I started launching into an answer for that, but have you heard of that? There's that miracle shrine in somewhere in, I think it's UK. It's like people go there and there's like a statue of Mary and they put them in the pool and people get healed. Like thousands of people go. You heard this?
No.
So there's what's it called? Mary statue healing. It's like famous. Like oh god, where is it? Someone help me. Oh, the Lord's healing. So it's this thing. Let me just share. So people go here and they get healed, and the Catholic Church actually will say, they'll actually say, yeah, this was an official healing,
Okay.
and and they'll say there's a bit more. This one says there's 70.
Okay.
But if you run the numbers, like on how many people go versus how many people have been certifiedly healed,
Yes.
it's exactly the same as spontaneous remission. So like how there's like 1 in a million people will just spontaneously, like their cancer will just dissolve and go away, or like there's spontaneous remission or the placebo effect. It's like perfectly in line with how many people go and how many like the healings there are. It's exactly the same number. So that's and of course, probably as a Christian, did you believe that Mary would heal people? Like I didn't. I would be like, no. I'm like,
that was a Catholic thing.
yeah. I was like, no. But people go here and they receive these healings. The same with there's this guy called Sathra Sai Baba, and he talks. This is what Sam Harris talks about a lot. He had 1 million people attend his birthday. He had those videos of him performing miracles. He's had 4 people who were raised from the dead. It's filmed. There's people you can talk to now who said, yes, I was raised by the dead by this person. Like but we don't accept that. And this is the same way. Like why would you accept the testimonies of Jesus and his disciples? So anyway, sorry for God, maybe I am an atheist evangelist or something.
Maybe you are, David. No, I'm so here for it. I love talking about this stuff. Thank you.
If you want, I'll tell you some good books to read. My favorite, God Is Not Great by Christopher Hitchens. You got like a little notepad.
Well, I'm a Christopher Hitchens fan.
Oh, awesome! Same. But that book there's the audio version on YouTube for free, and he reads it, and it's just incredible. Same as Waking Up for free, read by Sam Harris on YouTube. Yeah, that's a fantastic book. And if you read anything, if you're into Bible history, Bart Ehrman, anything by Bart Ehrman is incredible. It's a really easy. He's written 32 books or something, and like 8 of them are New York Times bestsellers. He's like one of the biggest Bible scholars in the world, and he talks about there's like misquoting Jesus, lost Christianity. Is like, if in fact go away and telling you all this stuff, go away and watch my video called Christianity's Lost Diversity, and that goes into like some of the stuff that Bart Ehrman talks about, and it is just like, it's only like 20 minutes long. It's like it's like clips from a Deep Drinks episode, but watch that and like I'll be surprised if you're not. I'm still amazed. I still watch it and I'm like, oh my god, this is amazing. Okay. So what that was, what if anything could change your mind? Okay, so what if anything could change your mind about and get you to believe in God wholeheartedly again?
I think if my ex went back to, if he just woke up one morning and was exactly how he was before, that would blow my mind.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, what you've gone through is just it's incredibly painful. Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, last question. If you could choose an afterlife and it would become true, both the good and the bad for everyone, what would you choose?
Man, if I could choose an afterlife, like make it up myself.
Like I guess no. I mean, like more like from for religious perspective, would you choose like the Christian heaven and hell, or like the different interpretations? So like a lot of people believe that the Christian hell is pretty disgusting, and so they'll think of it as like annihilation theory. So like there's no hell, like you're not burning for eternity, but you're just annihilated. But what would you choose if you choose something? Or like reincarnation, or enlightenment, or something like that? Or if you don't know enough about that stuff,
I don't know a ton. Reincarnation sounds cool. I was talking about this with a friend last week, is that like the idea of heaven, the Christian heaven, I've always been a little turned off by it because like it talks about how we'll just worship God forever. And
Yeah, I know.
as a worship leader, I'm like, I don't want to do that. Maybe I don't have the right idea about it, but it just sounds bad.
Yeah.
I would want to do other things too. I don't know. But I don't know. I love just like in life, I love the idea of failure is only failure if you don't learn something from it and try again. And I love the idea of like being able to try again,
Mm,
even
yeah.
as a different being. So I guess maybe that one. Yeah.
Yeah. I kind of like that as well. Like the Buddhist interpretation of like you just try again and try again and try again until you reach enlightenment.
Yeah.
There are some sects of Buddhism where they have like they have a hell, but the hell is temporary. It's like you go there to burn off your karma if you couldn't do it in the infinite amount of lifetimes or whatever, and then you become enlightened that way. But it's kind of like a nice thing. It's like a nice version of hell, I guess. Yeah. Or another one is like, have you seen Rick and Morty? Not to sound like that guy, but there's this episode where it's like a whole life that someone lives, and then like he takes off his glasses and he's like in like an alien arcade, and this whole life is just like a simulation. That's a cool kind of afterlife. Yeah. Okay, well, thank you so much for coming on, guys. All Kim's links are in the description. It's been awesome talking to you, and thank you so much for coming on. Is there anything you'd like to say before we leave?
Thank you. That's what I like to say. Oh my gosh, it's just been so fascinating and wonderful to share this time with you. I really appreciate you bringing me on and telling me your thoughts. And I have so much homework to do.
Well, I'd love to let me know how they're going. And if you have, we'll stay in touch, I'm sure. I'm going to play an outro, but you stick around because we can chat in the back room. But I'll talk to you everyone again. See you guys soon. Bye.